Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. We finally started to get some of the previews for Midnight Alpha regarding class changes, and of course I wanted to go over my current main, the class of Rogue, and everything we know about it so far. We get a bit of a preview regarding some of the talents and changes upcoming to the class of Rogue, and based on the duration of the video, you can see it's a fairly long one. However, it does look like they're going for a complete restructure for many aspects of Rogue, from the various hero talents, specifically targeting Deathstalker for Assassination and Fatebound for both Assassin and Outlaw. Outlaw is going through a new revamp with a brand new set of Roll the Bones that's meant to be less RNG focused and a lot more structured, with actual bursts behind some of our major cooldowns. Assassination is getting much better AoE damage, but also a more simplified rotation that isn't bogged down with way too many abilities. And Subtlety is actually getting many new revamps with better use cases for a lot of their major cooldowns, while also making stats like Haste and Critical Strike much more impactful towards the build and playstyle when it comes to gearing your character. It's a lot to go over, but I will leave chapter marks down below so you can skip around to all the different sections you want to preview specifically. As always, if you guys want to see more regular class updates and class videos for Midnight Alpha specifically, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. So when taking a look at these talents, do keep in mind that this is just the very first version of these talents, and potentially these may look very different once Midnight Alpha is finally made available. I am recording this video way before the alpha is in, though I may potentially be looking to record this to get actual talents within in-game as well. However, we do have some new stuff for Rogue, starting with the hero talents. First of all, some of them we're going to be able to go over very quickly. For hero talents, which is shared between Subtlety and Assassination, they're trying to make Deathstalker a little bit easier for Assassination in particular. Problem for Assassination is applying the actual Deathstalker's mark on a target outside of stealth is very difficult. So what they're doing now is, if a target does not have a Deathstalker's mark already, or if let's say one is gone, Garrote will now apply 3 stacks of Deathstalker's mark to your target. So Assassination should have an easier time reapplying those marks if they ever fall off, or moving those marks to a different target. So this should work out super well, and hopefully a lot better than having to save a vanish or some stealth mechanic in order to be able to land an ambush on a target, because Assassination rogues were having a hard time with Deathstalker consistency from its actual main ability specifically. Fatebound rogues, which is the coin flipping subtlety Assassination and Outlaw rogues, are getting some new changes. One, they want to make the Fatebound playstyle a lot more consistent for both of those specs and flow with them a little bit better, and also not punish them for putting yourself in an AoE situation. First of all, the new capstone is a lot better. After flipping 7 coins, doesn't matter whether they land in heads or tails, after doing 7 times, you get a buff for 15 seconds, which increases your agility, buffs Fatebound coin effects, all of them specifically by 50%, and coin flips are more likely to land on the same side, so you may be able to get better chains of multiple heads for a damage buff, or multiple heads for a huge cosmic damage. So this is much better, and it's a lot more consistent. You don't need to land 7 heads or 7 tails in order to proc it. Just any coin flips will do, gives you a buff. Also, while Lucky Coin is active, you'll also have some huge cooldown reduction mechanics for Adrenaline Rush, Deathmark, Kingsbane, and Ghost Strike. While the buff is active, you'll have 100% cooldown reduction faster, so it's going to be basically the 11.2 tier set, making its way into the Fatebound playstyle. We got some new talents like Overflowing Purse, which allows your Envenom dispatchers to sometimes randomly flip 3 coins at a time. There is going to be some randomness with this hero spec specifically, but they do want to make it a little bit better. They also got some new talents like Rush to Inevitable that allows you to regenerate energy when you flip those coins, giving you even more energy when they land on their edge, which is part of the main mechanic. These coin point flips, or coin flips, will also be able to restore health with a new version of Chosen's Revelry. And you will no longer have any AoE damage reductions when you're fighting multiple targets. Instead, Fatebound will buff some of your basic components, like Blade Flurry for Outlaw and Caustic Spatter for Assassination. With the hero spec of Trickster, for the time being, there's nothing new, although we still have a whole array of talents that are still under construction, so there'll likely be even more updates for this one in the future. From there, we can move on to the actual class talents, which didn't see too many new changes, but there are some crucial new additions, however, like the new capstone of Cold-Blooded Killer. Instead of having cold blood there, it is now a passive where crits with calm point generators have a chance to make your next finisher 100% critical strike chance, which should hopefully result in even more crits overall. Swift Slasher now also makes its way into the class talent tree that gives all three specs haste scaling with the auto attacks, which can be huge for Outlaw, but also Assassination for its poison application, and for Subtlety for its resource generation and calm points specifically, plus energy as well. Supercharger, however, looks like mostly got nerfed as they made it so it now only works with only major cooldown abilities. So for Assassination, that's Kingsbane, for Outlaw, that's Adrenaline Rush, and for Subtlety, that is Shadow Dance. From there, we can move on to the actual spec changes, and Assassination is going through a pretty wild number of really solid adjustments, where your talent tree doesn't look too different, but the actual crucial gameplay components are going to be changed. They're looking to reduce the number of abilities you have to use during your basic rotational abilities, but also during your burst as well, especially when it comes to AoE content. They want to improve on your AoE capabilities with even more talents, and reward Assassination's unique mechanic of energy management. There are some moments where Assassination has been encouraged to pool energy or hold off from spending energy, and they tried to make some of those talents better, but this time around they find a way to make Apex talents give you even more reward for waiting to spend your energy at a right moment, because you can be fueled with even more resources if you play it correctly. For Assassination, their talent is Implacable, which I think is the first time I've heard that word in my life, honestly. Envenom deals 10% more damage. When a Venom bonus expires, you will gain 40% increased damage for 5 seconds, or for 40% increased energy regeneration for 5 seconds. You can gain up to additional 15% energy regen for each Envenom used while Envenom buffer is already active. So as Assassination, you would chain Envenoms, which is part of your basic mechanic. There's some talents that also support having to chain Envenoms back to back for even more damage. And this energy regeneration bonus can be buffed further by up to 100% total. So as Assassination, once you apply your bleeds, you're spamming Envenoms against the target to chain them as best as possible. But at some point, you do have to go and reapply your bleeds, or potentially you're holding off energy until a big damage window. Now, when you do hold off spending calm points on Envenoms, you'll get a burst of energy to help you easily reapply all of those bleeds, all of those dots, or be fueled for even more burst damage once you have it ready and available. So this is going to be huge. The next capstone is just going to increase your nature damage and bleed damage by 10 and 20%, and the final one is going to play around the ability of Kingsbane. After striking him with Kingsbane, rapidly strike at your target 5 times, dealing nature and physical damage over 1.5 seconds. Each strike applies a lethal poison, buffing the damage of Kingsbane, but also generates a calm point, giving you immediate finisher to go into an Envenom. Perfect for a setup for burst that plays heavily around Kingsbane, and I think is going to make Kingsbane a mandatory ability for you to have at all times as every build of Assassination going forward. Outside of this, they also try to make some new talent adjustments, like the move Crimson Tempest super high up into the air, which is super easy to achieve as well. With Crimson Tempest, you slash at your targets within 10 yards, dealing damage, but also you will copy your corrodes and ruptures on at least 2 other enemies. So this is going to be a new way for you to spread corrodes and ruptures instead of applying a whole new bleed of Crimson Tempest, so one less debuff for you to manage. They also wanted to improve AoE. Spatter has gotten better. Envenom or Kingsbane will apply Caustic Spatter to the target. You no longer need to mutilate on the target to apply this. Caustic Spatter causes 40% of your nature damage against the spatter target to splash into nearby enemies. You can further empower it with a new talent called Secondary Poisoning. When you apply a weapon poison with single target attacks, you have a 50% chance to strike a nearby enemy for additional physical damage and apply that same weapon poison to them. So now your weapon poisons can spread and splash to nearby targets, which is pretty awesome. We also have some new talents like Deadly Momentum. Finisher moves have a 3% chance per calm point spent to increase your chance to critical strike by 6% for 6 seconds to even more crit interaction for even more research generation and damage as well. They also got some new adjustments for capstones. The right hand side has Avulsion, which buffs your rupture damage greatly, going down to Scent of Blood, which is mostly similar, as well as Sudden Demise, which is also most similar. The middle row gives you Rapid Injection, which encourages you being able to chain Envenoms back to back into the target. Then it's a choice note of Inspiring Strikes, where applying Envenom while Envenom is already active causes you to increase all damage deal by 5%, in addition to increasing your poison damage, so even more reason for you to chain Envenoms. Or Poisoner's Drive, applying Envenom while Envenom is already active, restores combo points, which ends up with a double poison talent, which is about the same. Left hand side of the talent tree we still have Kingsbane, but also a talent below it called Regicide's Reward. When Kingsbane ends, you gain 2% haste for every 5 stacks of increased Kingsbane, decreasing by 2% every 2 seconds. So basically a ramp up in haste after the buff expires. On the left hand side we have similar talents like Blindside, going into Zoldyck Recipe, and Dash and Scoundrel, which are not necessarily new as they are compared to the War Within versions. The next spec on the docket is the Outlaw Rogue, and they're looking to simplify this spec greatly. One of the ways they're doing that is to create an easier version of Roll the Bones. No longer will you have to roll a buff between like 5-6 different buff combos. Now there's only 4 specific combinations, but they're a lot more straightforward and easy to handle. They also wanted to give you less cooldowns to manage and track, so you will no longer be vanishing as an Outlaw Rogue in order to activate Crackshot and do damage, which is going to be huge. And you will have better defined and approachable gameplay that's especially good for brand new players. While for Outlaw we can't preview the talents in the Wowhead, for example, we do know of the Apex talents that's going to drive the rest of the spec, called Grave Digger. Between the Eyes has a 45% chance to apply 2 stacks of its bonus to your damage dealt. This is important because Between the Eyes is now going to be a more direct damage amp against the target, so now you can stack up those multiple stacks against the target to do even more damage to them than before. It's more consistent that way. Your next trait is going to allow you, whenever you spend 5 or more calm points on Dispatch, to immediately strike the target with additional physical damage, so even more damage output. And your final capstone for that Apex is going to be, when you dispatch, you have a 12% chance per combo point spent to hide a bullet in your jacket pocket. When you hide 6 bullets in your jacket pocket 6 times, your next Between the Eyes will now be used free, so no energy cost, will deal damage as if you spend 6 combo points, and immediately will reset its own cooldown, so you'll be able to use Between the Eyes a lot more regularly after pressing Dispatch. They also done a couple of things for Between the Eyes that's a little bit different now, like Expert Duelist talent, which allows you to now increase the damage dealt to the target by additional 2% instead of, I think, 20% crit chance. I don't know if they're still going to bake in the Between the Eyes gives you a higher chance to crit against the target, or if this is just going to be a new mechanic in general where you'll just do more damage to the target, but it looks like there'll be some damage stacking component through Between the Eyes specifically, which is going to be interesting, and paired together with the Apex talents, potentially could be huge as a damage ramp up. They also removed the ability of Crackshot, but they did buff up Between the Eyes Asip and Sleeve talent. Between the Eyes will now have a chance per combo point spent to grant you 4 combo points and reset its own cooldown, so sometimes Between the Eyes could just reset itself without you needing to be in a vanish window. So resetting Between the Eyes is going to be pretty core gameplay to the Outlaw outside of having to press any other cooldowns. Besides this, they also want to change the way Roll the Bones functions, and Roll the Bones will now grant you a buff. This buff now has different levels to it, so when you roll, you get either level 1, 2, 3, or 4. When you get a buff, you also get all of the lower ranks of that level, from what we can understand based on the blue post. So it sounds like if, let's say, you get a level 3 buff, you also get a bonus for level 2 and level 1 as well. And these are the buffs as we know them so far. One of a Kind, which is a level 1 buff. Sinister Strike has a 20% chance to strike again at your target and will grant you a proc of opportunity. So basically just buffs the chance of Sinister Strike striking twice at your target. The buff 2 is Double Trouble. Sinister Strike and Ambush generate 1 additional combo point and deal 50% increased damage. Triple Threat is the level 3 buff. Restless Blade's cooldown reduction is increased by 30%. In Jackpot, which is a level 4 buff, critical strike chance is increased by 10%. So what I understand from this is if you get Jackpot, you get basically all the buffs. If you get Triple Threat, you also get Double Trouble and One of a Kind. If you get Double Trouble, you also get One of a Kind. And if you just get the One of a Kind, it's just by itself. So when you roll, you get basically 1, 2, 3, or 4 buffs at a time instead of Roll the Bones with all these different buffs that you gotta track. So we'll see exactly how that works in practice in the alpha. So maybe, because I might be misunderstanding this buff mechanic overall, but it seems that you overall have less buffs to manage in general. Back to the actual talent tree, we do have some brand new talents here to go over, such as Menacing Rush, because there's going to be a new way for them to play around with Adrenaline Rush as an ability. You can either give it a longer duration, or Adrenaline Rush will now magnify your precision increasing your damage of your combo point generating abilities and finishers by 15%, which makes Adrenaline Rush more as a burst ability with actual damage amplification rather than just a buff that you can passively keep up, which might make it a very strong buff overall. 50% damage amp is actually quite strong when you think about it. They also have some new talents versus the versatility called Flickering Steel. Sinner Strike and Ambush deal 20% increased damage and generate 5 energy when they grant you opportunity, so even more ways to amplify your basic comp point builders. Dragon Bone Dice is a talent that can further amplify the Roll the Bones ability. The bonuses for things like, it amplifies all of those bonuses to be stronger. So bonuses for a chance for Sinner Strike to strike twice are 5% greater. Bonuses to Sinner Strike and Ambush damage are 5% greater. Bonuses to Restless Blade's cooldown reduction is 10% greater. And Jackpot bonus to critical chance is 5% greater. So just basically buffs all the other bonuses. Some of the capstones of this spec are going to be very interesting. Hidden Opportunity allows Ambush a chance to grant opportunity. Chance to trigger this effect has 80% chance of Sinner Strike. Some of the capstones are being changed for this spec as well, like Hidden Opportunity is now going to give Ambush a chance to grant opportunity, not giving Ambush a chance for it to strike twice, so it's going to be a little bit different between Sinner Strike and Ambush builds. You still have Killing Spree, which seems to be unchanged. Down below, we still have Keep It Rolling, which just allows you to extend whatever buff combination you have currently for your Roll the Bones. To the right of that, we have a new talent called Fast Action, which reduces the cooldown of between the eyes by 5 seconds. And to the right of that, we have Taken by Surprise, which is now on the bottom right talent tree overall in the spec. It's going to be interesting to see how these talents and capstones does allow you to make for a different build going forward. Finally, we have Subtlety Rogues, and for now, Subtlety does not have all of the Apex talents. However, we do have some of the talent changes that we're going to be very short in this section. First of all, they want to try to reduce the amount of cooldowns that Subtlety Rogues have, because they're bogged down with way too many cooldowns, and some of them are way too free-flowing and don't really have a meaningful use case. So new players that are not aware of perfect time to use the cooldowns can easily waste damage. So it's basically a spec that causes you to be forced to log dive and look through fights ahead of time in order to even be able to perform mildly well. So they're trying to reduce that as best as possible. So they're trying to simplify some of the use cases for the cooldowns and make stats like Haste and Critical Strike better for Subtlety in general. So we have a couple of things like Haste from some of the talents will now help reduce the cooldown of abilities like Symbols of Death, Shadow Dance, and Secret Technique. So Haste is no longer worthless as a talent. Planned Execution talent will allow Symbols of Death to have a guaranteed increased critical strike damage for all of your abilities for 10 seconds. So stacking more crit allows you even better overall output. Flatulation as a talent is removed, as it is usually tied together with Shadow Blades, and with that, they just simply allowing Shadow Blades to be your big core ability. And even certain talents such as Shuriken Tornado are no longer active. It is now instead is a passive that allows Shuriken Storm to cause itself to repeat after 1.2 seconds for resource generation. So you can now use Shuriken Storm, use a finisher, it'll automatically activate a Shuriken Storm afterwards, and then you can follow up with yet another finisher in AoE situations. So it should actually be a pretty good talent, hopefully overall, and could potentially be very strong with the way that Shadow Blades works. The Shadow Blades causes all your abilities to immediately grant you maximum full comp points. So you can go for a fan into a Shuriken Storm, into a Eviscerate, into a free Eviscerate, following the Shadow Blades. So there's definitely going to be some cool synergies for Subtlety, but their talent tree still isn't fully done, even in the preview, and we'll see exactly how this evolves over the next few weeks. Whatever they end up doing with the class of Rogue, I do hope we'll get more regular updates a lot earlier. For the last 2 expansions, War Within and even Dragonflight, Rogue has been the class that's gotten the least amount of updates, only towards the tail end of a development cycle, so hopefully they'll be a little bit more aggressive with Rogue updates and Rogue adjustments throughout Midnight. Otherwise, a lot of these on paper do sound like a great idea. However, between alpha and between the release of Midnight, a million of things are going to change before then, before the actual release of the expansion. But it is going to be interesting to see how my favorite class, my current main, evolves throughout all of that time. What we got so far at least looks pretty promising. As always though, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching this update and hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give it a like, as it would very much appreciate it. Also, be sure to join our Discord community, especially if you want to keep up with any Midnight or potentially War Within, like Legion Remix updates, because this will be coming out very soon. As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and as always, I'll see all of you guys in our next one.